Welcome to the Myth, Legend and Lore podcast. A song, like a story, speaks from a time and a place. Time passes and its voice diminishes. But sometimes a story speaks to the essence of human nature, and its power lasts through time, regardless of space, regardless of place. Lorcán MacMathúna. Today I have the joy and honour of sharing An Bhuatais and the Meaning of Life, the outstanding new album by Lorcán MacMathúna, with Martin Tourish, Daire Braken and Éamonn Galldubh. The album is accompanied by a beautiful and engaging book, An Bhuatais and the Meaning of Life, the mythological representation of hope, longing and fire, written by Lorcán. And I have to say, it is an enlightening and philosophical exploration of what it is that gives life meaning. And at some point in our lives, most of us will contemplate this. The book is fascinating. Not only does it contain interpretations and explanations of the songs, but it takes us on a journey through a period in Ireland's history that had a profound impact on its people. Famine, conflicts, societal and spiritual upheaval were very real aspects of life spanning centuries, and this had a tangible effect on art, the written word, music, and voices. Ways in which people could communicate what was in their hearts and minds, and to try to better understand or survive the world surrounding them. In past episodes of the podcast, we've explored a variety of Irish myths, legends, and folklore. And if you have a keen interest in this, as well as the history and traditions of Ireland's people, then this album, this book, is undoubtedly for you. There are striking images, and one that has stayed with me, that I honestly can't stop thinking about, is of a family in their home. Lorcán tells us it was taken at the turn of the 20th century. It shows a woman and 4 young children gathered beside a hearth. It's clear that they have very little. The house is sparsely furnished. The room has a dirt floor, and not one of them are wearing shoes. Yet the woman is smiling. Today we will hear some of the music that can be found on the album, and some short translations and passages from the book itself. I will, of course, add links to Lorcán's website, YouTube and social media. Please check out the video recorded on the launch of An Bhuatais. It was a wonderful evening and I wholeheartedly recommend it. It really was a fantastic experience. The Sean-Nos style of singing is more than a melody, and though it is traditionally performed in Irish, I think it possesses a language of its own, one that stirs an emotional response. It can be haunting, powerful, philosophical, and as we will discover today, quite beautiful. I think Lorcán says it best in this quote. My take on Sean-Nos is that the melodic shape of a song is entirely based on the formation of the words and their power. That the spirit of Sean-Nos is to shape the melody to fit the power of the story. The music and the stories of Sean-Nos are entwined inseparably. It is a deeply expressive form of music. And so, to our first song, An Rave to Ar an Carrig, Were You at the Rock? Our next song also lends its title to the album, An Bhuatais. When reading the lyrics, I really was struck by the power of the words, and I was curious about the title, and delighted when I discovered Lorcán provides a little history of the man behind the song. Diarmuid O'Shea, 1755 to 1846, wrote An Bhuatais in criticism of his parish priest. O'Shea was in fact a scholar who taught in hedge schools, and they were affected by the seasons. During the time of the harvest and planting, a teacher might find himself working the land. Hedge schools sprung up in response to the exclusion of Catholic and Presbyterian children from education. However, in the early 18th century, more and more teachers were working in illegal schools that were located near hedges, rivers, outbuildings, homes, and even chapels. It seems that O'Shea and the priest did not get along. Lorcán tells us O'Shea criticised the priest for employing workers on a holy day. In an altercation over this matter, the workers roughed him up and rudely dumped him outside the property. This is the last verse of the song. My love, my weakness, residing in a wasteland. I hear no lines for you in heaven everlasting. I've heard not in manuscripts modest or learned, since the death of Éamonn have we had his like. Have you looked often on one who suffers? You will get your due, I think, on the day of your death. You will go to heaven without hat, without boots, but a noble mantle descending to your feet.
Ante a jurok blinder labe ing aller is groten is a dairo elkena jasov a grafo is a kula snis min og rafer en banner Miakutu Yasa Agoling on Fish Krona Crush is a conner Tayola Maram Yokon Glover in a can Lord Mogra Molager Imraner Eglishopt Sneaklish Main Doin Wedge Ivlas Non Ros Niarian Mamran Knasten Ostoma O Kyle Goen Robot Nilabar No Vasen long bosh Ryers no flawish Gan hatte gan Bhuatais Akokoroso and no wizard goes on
Leachtan Suvna.
Lachtan Suvna Sonile Rochroid Machride Aquene Anvan Longos Herre Kakarn Miokon Neigelt Anven Long Glaun Molkan Bon Herkexevnas Long Anven Gox Rodoigas Anven Aver Armsa Toniaka Fadalanga Nosaken Rahiv Garavredamti Mahonvan Anaterni Tjuvra Gjalta Shudal Anvan Kaktar Bjöker Varglas Anvan Lom Agan of Glaun Anvan Aishka
Pied Beauty.
Counter with swift, slow, sweet sour and dazzled. He fathers forward his beauty's pasturing.
And Roimond Don Dealish. In his book, Lorcan writes, "This is a song of the political, allegorical kind, typical to the 18th century in Ireland. The utterly transformed circumstances of Ireland of that era, where the Irish were dispossessed of their land and reduced to chattel status through a penal law code, elicited a proliferation of political songs, where the message was delivered through allegory. This poem laments the reduced state of the herders Roimond Dun, a native breed of cow, which translates as white-ridged, brown-backed. It's a strange metaphor for a wandering people, leaderless and exiled from their homes, but one that is emotionally weighted to be easily grasped by its intended audience, which was used to the allegorical device of anthropomorphical Ireland, represented as a woman in bondage to the new lord." From the second verse. Land, homestead, wines, music, I am reft of them all. Chief and bard that once wooed me are gone from my call. And cold water to soothe me, I sup with my tears, while the foe that pursues me is the drinking that cheers.
Nil faren, nil tieshagam, nil finten akyo, nil flawe vam chedachte. You'll see in the slow. I'll kick share all on is good. Gamen August by is fleeing. Éamonn
Sean Vig Moricha Gleagle.
Jan big for the cow play, gal, down lads down our reach. Oh, honest of a no head, and mother heard him jump in the chest of a carny prince and a glass. Oh, hold of on Daire grin, oh, gonna come long gone man, look the sock on the boy and a near.
Na Connerys. The story behind this song makes for interesting reading. Waterford Chronicle, March 8th, 1834. County Court, Thursday, 3rd day. This morning at 10 o'clock, the Chief Baron came into the court, shortly after which a petty jury was sworn, when the following trials took place. John Connery was indicted for the murder of David Tobin on the 1st of October near Dungarvan. The whole of the evidence adduced on this case turned principally on the dying declaration of the deceased. It appeared that the deceased was going from Dungarvan, accompanied by his wife, to his residence at Colgan. On his way home, he met with the prisoner, his brother, and another person, all of whom went into a cabaret where they drank some whiskey, and while there, one of the Connerys asked Tobin whether he was a Pauline or a Gow. Tobin replied that he belonged to neither party. They then left the house together, and on their way, he received a blow of a stone which fractured his skull, and which ultimately caused his death. A policeman swore that the deceased, previous to his death, told him positively that it was the prisoner John Connery that struck him. The only witness examined for the defence was a brother of Connery's, who swore that he was in company with his brother when the deceased the night that he received a blow which caused his death, and that he, the prisoner, did not throw any stone or strike any blow to the deceased. The judge charged the jury, and having recapitulated the evidence, he commented on it in terms favourable to the prisoner. The jury, having retired to their room, returned in a few minutes with a verdict of acquittal. The Connerys, Patrick, John, and James, lived in an Ireland that during the first half of the 19th century faced a great many challenges. Lorcan tells us that during this period, before the famine of 1845 to 48, Gaelic was still widely spoken among people who found themselves marginalised by the political structures and enforced sectarian order. At this point, Ireland was largely a rural economy, and with a strict class system in place, and depending where you existed in the order of things, that decided how difficult life would become when times were hard. Lorcan explains the labouring class, i.e. the agricultural worker, felt pressure the hardest. Next were the landholders and rent collectors, felt the squeeze at times of falling agricultural prices. And lastly, the landed gentry, a protected class sitting at the top of the pyramid, were mostly immune to the problems this posed. The lives of the Connerys were greatly affected by these issues. Over the years, they found themselves coming to loggerheads with the law, facing charges of illegal activities, ranging from secret societies to accusations of murder, as we heard in the newspaper article, and even escaping from jail. By 1838, the Connery brothers found themselves sentenced to 14 years in an Australian penal colony. The history of the Connerys is fascinating, and Lorcan covers it in detail in this section of the book. I discovered the newspaper article and a convict record online, which lists the brothers on the passenger manifest, along with 71 other offenders.
Shakiet Gawed Ayana Gwen is true started color Our God be our manel knago is shingo dawen sonel no ger kalasation conter me
Plate Agus Donal. Plate, son of the king of Lochlin, came forth from the battalion of men in armour and said 3 times, Faras Donal, Faras Donal, Faras Donal. They fought then, and endeavoured each to slaughter and mangle the other. And they fell slain by each other. And they were found in the morning thus, the hair of each in the fist of the other, and the sword of each through the heart of the other. And each of them has come within the grasp of the other, and the battalions made a furious, barbarous, smashing onset on each other. Not one person of the 2 hosts could recognise another, though it might be his son or his brother. Our spears over our heads had become clogged and bound with long locks of hair, when cut away by well-aimed swords and gleaming axes. And there arose a wild, impetuous, precipitate, furious, dark, frightful, voracious, merciless, combative, contentious, the Baif, screaming and fluttering over their heads. And there arose also the satyrs, and the idiots, and the maniacs of the valleys, and the witches and the goblins, and the ancient birds, and the destroying demons, and the feeble demonic phantom host. And they were screaming and comparing the valour and the combat of both parties.
Isn't sun tonic plight can agus Albert Fortree Farastovna Rocker Exoder agus Rogov Cocktail Garlo agus Atkuba Kela de rockeder ook het je wrekelen agus is aller op rooie daar naar voren agus volt kachter deel en in darle agus een gliede vrij vrede agus roodje gaat in de gelatief agus rotar vet blod van varif botte barbade dan gaat ik in derle botte barbade dan gaat ik in derle in time of timere dini dan dokai ach niera kella kide magno vroer balko vagus go
Van Oud Hughes. This is a tale lovers of folklore are sure to enjoy, and there are elements that remind me a little of the Scottish Tam Lin. We are told of a young woman who, taken against her will, finds herself trapped in a fairy rath or a ring fort. She discovers a woman washing clothes by a river and pleads with her to help, revealing much about the life that lies before her should her husband not rescue her. It would be fair to say some of the lyrics are dark, and the urgency of the woman's situation is made dreadfully clear. I'll read you a translation by Mary McLaughlin. O women, down yonder on the bank of the stream, do you understand my complaint? It's a year and a day today since I was abducted from my horse, and I was brought into the Leas on the hill. Here is my big, beautiful house. There's plenty of new beer and old beer in it. There's plenty of yellow honey and beeswax in it. There's many an old man in fetters in it. There's many a boy with curly brown hair in it. There's many a girl with pretty yellow curly hair in it. There are 12 women bearing sons in it. There are many more besides them in it. Tell my husband to come tomorrow with a wax candle in the palm of his hand, a black-handled knife to bring in his hand, and the first horse to strike in the gap. The herb to cut is at the door of the Leas. I hope to God I will go home with him, for if he doesn't come at that time, I will be made a queen of these women.
Sun couple tossy of summer night.
Cuckooing. The Wind Hover.
As the skate's heel sweeps smooth on the bow bend, the hurl and gliding, rebuffed the big wind, my heart in hiding, stirred for a bird, the achieve on the mastery of the thing. Brute beauty and valor and act where pride plume near vocal, and the fire that breaks from deed in a billion times to lovelier nor dangerous, oh my chevalier. No wonder of it, sheer blood makes ploughed down Cillian shine, and blue bleak embers, ah, my dear, fall call themselves and gaish gold vermilion.
Micton Davi.
Tos boine döslin av vägen, tal och kair go fioled lager, agus jevnes the jas
The Dead Kings. On the 19th of August 1887, Francis Ledwidge was born to parents Patrick, a farm labourer, and Anne. He was their 8th child. Sadly, by the time he was 4 years old, his father died, leaving behind 9 children, the youngest only a few months old. His mother provided for her family, undertaking work in the fields and earning 8 shillings a week. While in education, Francis joined the Literary Society for Juveniles, and his love of poetry was kindled. At the age of 13, Francis left school and over the following years was employed in a variety of trades. He met and fell in love with Ellie Bohy, a security patron by the name of Lord Dunsany, a local aristocrat, who said this of the young poet: "I was astonished by the brilliance of that eye that looked at the fields of me, and seen there all the simple birds and flowers, with a vividness that made those pages like a magnifying glass, through which one looked at familiar things seen thus for the first time." I wrote to him greeting him as a true poet, which indeed he was. Soon after, Francis found himself as a member of the Irish Literacy Circle, and with a considerable audience, the magazine Saturday Review had begun to publish his work. Ledwidge found himself in favour of the Home Rule movement. Still, on October 25th, 1914, he joined Lord Dunsany's regiment, the 5th Battalion of the Royal Enniskilling Fusiliers, and was sent to barracks in Dublin. On his decision to join the war effort, Francis said, "I joined the British Army because England stood between Ireland and an enemy common to our civilization. I would not have had it said that she defended us while we did nothing at home but pass resolutions." In July 1915, Lance Corporal Ledwidge landed at Gallipoli. By the winter of the same year, Ledwidge's regiment were in Serbia, where the conditions were harsh. Suffering an injury to his back during an attack, Francis was hospitalised, eventually being sent to Manchester. While there, Francis heard the news of the Easter Rising and the devastating loss of his friend by execution. Francis was utterly disillusioned by the war effort, but despite a court-martial, he returned to service, and by 1916, he was fighting on the front line in France. In 1917, his unit was then sent north to Belgium. On July 20th, he wrote to his mother, saying, "I want to see again my wonderful mother, and to walk by the Boyne to Crewbon, and up through the brown and grey rocks of Crochnaharna. You have no idea of how I suffer with this longing for the swish of the reeds at Slane, and the voices I used to hear coming over the low hills of Caribouy. Say a prayer that I may get this leave, and give us a condition, my punctual return and sojourn until the war is over." On the 31st of July, 1917, at only 29 years of age, Francis Ledwidge lost his life.
Sends the poet perished, and all they cherished in the way. Their thoughts on in the hours of bliss.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode as much as I have. We've only had a small snapshot of the incredible amount of work, dedication and love that's gone into this stunning album and book, and Bhuatais, and the meaning of life. You can find Lorcán and the album on lorcanmacmathúna.com, YouTube, over on Bandcamp, SoundCloud, Reverb Nation, and Twitter at @Mac_Lorcan. I always think it's important to learn what inspires work such as this, and at times it's felt like an emotional journey as well as illuminating. I'm delighted to say that the podcast has a couple of projects coming up that will feature the music and incredible singing of Lorcán MacMathúna, that will appeal to those of us who harbour a love of the Irish and Norse myths, legends and folklore. As always, please feel free to get in touch on email mlegendslore@gmail.com or over on Twitter @loremyth. Do take care for now. I'm Siobhan Clark, and you've been listening to the Myth, Legend and Lore podcast.
It's a walk to no one walk to Galldubh is finished it's a walk to one to but who is pavilch of law some walk to ma Valentine is a will